So I'm not sure, right? So what do we need for the race to be interesting? Ideally, you have some faster cars behind slower cars. And then in this Pirelli era, you want a tyre delta offset. So you want some cars on track on slightly newer tyres, some on slightly older tyres, some on soft tyres, some on medium tyres, all to give you that extra opportunity to pass. And this race had the qualifying being like it was, putting about 5 cars out of sync in front of a pack of about 4 faster cars behind. So that gave us action at the start with Alonso desperately trying to make up places and spinning. Carlos Sainz also making a mistake, again, because he's at the back and he's trying to make up places. And then the 2 safety cars were ideally timed. So the first safety car gave people an opportunity to change strategies. So that mixed the grid up again and put people on different strategies. And then the final safety car also did that, because the final safety car is what put Perez in the mix and gave us a lot of action at the end. Otherwise, it would have just been Verstappen cruising up to the back of Leclerc and overtaking. So whilst that was a good Grand Prix, and the track and the low grip has contributed a much bigger part than I would have guessed it did, they did have that perfect trifecta of conditions to put cars out of order.
Yeah, and I think inherently it's a punishing track, not just in the fact that it's a street circuit, but in the fact that the time of the year it's running, the cold conditions, which are much colder than any other race this year, and it's going to be the same next year as well. It's going to be round 22 next year. So I think that does all play into this being it's a tricky track. Like that, we haven't seen a turn one like that for a while, where like the amount of people, first couple of laps, the amount of mistakes we were seeing.
Yeah, and people, there's just no, it's like an ice skating rink.
I would like to know, like, in terms of driver error, how many, I mean, we had Lando massive shunt.
Massive shunt as well, yeah.
You know, how many driver errors relative to other tracks on the calendar, I would say.
Yeah.
But I think, so Spanner said that the safety cars played into the way it kind of worked as a race and popped. But the track layout has a lot to do with the fact that there were safety cars.
Exactly.
And we may well get that every year we come here. Or maybe we'll come next year and actually it'll be a little bit straightforward like sometimes Baku is. But this track, I think, has just a little bit more about it.
I think if we're looking at like sort of the potential, I think obviously, yes, we had people out of position. Qualifying was a bit nuts, but I mean, more often than not this season, we've had Checo going out in Q2 anyway and stuff like that. I think the potential comes in the way that, like you said, there were overtakes happening everywhere. I think pretty much every single braking zone had at least a few overtakes today, and even non-braking zones because of switchbacks and maneuvers through like after turn one and stuff. And you also had people re-overtaking, like battles. Like genuinely, it was a bit of back and forth. It wasn't just driving up to someone, DRS, boom, that's it, keep it moving. So I think the flow of the track and being able to stay within a second of someone once they've overtaken you so that you can make a move again a couple of laps later, I think, I see potential.
Just to be difficult.
Go for it.
That's what we want.
We love the attacking because that's the sexy bit, isn't it? But was it too hard for cars to defend? There was no opportunity really to defend.
I think DRS cruise past.
There were a few, yeah.
There were a few, but you're always going to get
everywhere.
some of them, I guess, aren't you? Like, a track like this inherently is going to be, I think we talked about this in stream, right? I was quite concerned before this race that, you know, we never raced here before. How have they worked out the DRS zones? And I think broadly speaking, broadly speaking, they nailed it, but it's never going to be 100%, is it? Yeah, I mean, the Hasses, they were getting overtaken in a straight line.
Yeah,
because
but that's just because people were being filtered back through. And
because
stuff
I'm
like that
happy
as
to
well.
complain both ways. So at Singapore, I'll complain that you get stuck because it's impossible to overtake. But what we didn't have is that kind of Singapore effect where people couldn't follow from 8 seconds behind.
Yeah.
We didn't have that. They could follow closely. But what I love actually about that is low grip. And nearly every time we talk about a great race with mixed conditions and stuff, we always want this situation with low grip. And we saw low grip today and you saw people having to drive it and struggle with it. So I will once again, Brad, try to convince you that the time has come to bring back groove tyres and low grip.
So groove tyres are not necessary. You can have low grip in other ways that don't make the cars look silly.
Skinny wooden tyres. Skinny wooden tyres.
Skinny wooden tyres.
Farthing tyres.
That are square.
And I think if you're going to reduce grip, reducing mechanical grip isn't the thing you want to take away. It's the aero. But yeah, it pains me as a driver watching much better drivers struggle because the tyres aren't quite in the window. It actually pains me. I don't like seeing that. But in terms of an entertaining race as a complete outsider just watching it, I agree. It gives you, there's a bit more of an unknown aspect to it. You don't quite know who's going to make it work. It wasn't anything like as slippery as some people were predicting.
No,
we had this
lap
whole Turkey situation.
Yeah,
lap one,
Turkey,
turn one was more slippery than people, the drivers expected. A couple of people clearly just making big errors. But aside from that, I think they judged it quite well. Like you say, Span, it was kind of the right balance of, it was grippy enough that you could have good racing and people could go offline and make passes. It wasn't like the racing line was the only usable part of the track.
For sure.
But it was just low grip enough that you had to get it right. You couldn't barrel down the inside and expect it to be okay. And Leclerc on aging tyres towards the end couldn't afford to break a couple of meters late and get away with it. He's immediately going to lock up and run away.
Yeah. And I think going into, we had a similar level, well, not to the same extent, but, we talked about this, didn't we, last week? Like Miami kind of came with all this fanfare and this intrigue and the races just have not delivered there. And I'm really glad this wasn't the same. I think if Miami had been a pleasant surprise, I think there would have been maybe a bit less skepticism going into Vegas.
Yeah.
Fortunately, Vegas has bucked the trend. But what I will say, this was a fantastic race, but I think there's always room for improvement. This is the very first time that we're not going to see the exact same format, I'm sure, next season. What would we change? Is there anything we'd change about this weekend's format? Maybe start time, maybe DRS? I don't know. Is there anything we'd move for next year?
I'll just do exactly the same next time. Make sure that there's no grip. Have a couple of safety cars. Because also the safety cars, we take it for granted, but obviously the safety cars push the pack back together again and gave us that racing. And on street circuits, when you get a high percentage of safety cars, that is a lot of the time what saves it as a spectacle. Like Baku is really binary. If there's a well-timed safety car, good race. If not, absolute dud.
Yeah.
So if I was the FIA, I would just, Nelson Piquet it, Junior, every single time. Make sure, just pay one of the drivers.
Magnussen, I reckon Magnussen would be down.
Who's on their way out?
One driver.
Yeah, Magnussen's probably your last year. Here's some cash. Maybe you have a little accident. We'll tell you when.
He's crashed for the fourth time this week.
Look at the sphere. When the sphere kind of does a cutting the throat signal, K-Mag knows that's the time.
The sphere just comes up with a random driver's face. You've been allocated this time. The Hunger Games.
Just have it like with K-Mag doing a thumbs up and the graphic will say, I'm sure everything will be okay for Kevin Magnussen right now. And then when he crashes, no one will suspect a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So in terms of some other realistic things that they might want to do, you could potentially just clip the DRS zone length slightly, because there were a couple of passes that the move was done well before the next corner. But it wasn't terrible. And I think just the pack closing up, just another year of the regulations kind of working and hopefully everyone closing up. We already had a pretty close race throughout much of the field. Another year of it getting hopefully closer. And it should just work, because all you really need is a track where racing is possible. And it's a track where the high speed and the long straights and DRS and slipstream will keep people hopefully relatively bunched together. And as long as you can also overtake in that situation, if you get it right, then it'll be an interesting race. So I don't think too much needs to change. I don't really know in terms of layout and that kind of thing. I don't know even what's possible